This is the Movers and Shakers Podcast, episode 13.
Welcome to the Movers and Shakers Podcast, the place where high achievers share their secrets on how to take your life, career, and business to the next level. And now, here's your host, Rob Wilson.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 13 of the Movers and Shakers Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Rob Wilson, and just want to say thank you for joining us here today. As always, it's a great pleasure to be with you. I want to send a quick shout out to Budget Y. So in other words, the word budget and the letter Y 4 times for leaving an awesome comment for us about the podcast in iTunes. Thank you so much for taking the time to leave a comment. And if any of you guys would like to leave a comment to help us help the show get better and help other people find the show, that would be awesome. You can do that at robwilson.tv/iTunes. We are 42 countries strong right now. So thank you to everyone around the world who's listening to the podcast. And if you'd like to help more people find it, giving us a rating and review in iTunes would do that. You could do that at robwilson.tv/iTunes. So today we've got a very interesting topic that some people might even feel is a little controversial. And that's what happens in a relationship when she makes more, meaning in a relationship when the wife makes more than the husband. So according to a recent US Census study, 4 in 10 U.S. households with children under 18 have a woman as the primary or sole breadwinner, and that is 4 times what it was in the 1960s, back when Mad Men wasn't a show. It was what was happening in real life. Now, I don't think that this would be news except for the fact that we always get stuck in outdated ideas of what the world should look like. And times change. So to help us sort this all out, today we're going to chat with Farnoosh Torabi, who is a personal finance expert, coach, and author of the new book, When She Makes More, 10 Rules for Breadwinning Women. And she has a ton of advice for both men and women on how to make a relationship work under these circumstances. She's been featured on the Today Show, Yahoo, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, The View, CNN, a number of other media outlets. And she's also going to share with us what she learned on her journey as a personal finance expert and her strategies on how to write, launch, and promote books that can help people live happier, richer lives. So this is going to be a good one, everybody. So sit back, take notes, enjoy the interview with Farnoosh Torabi. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Movers and Shakers Podcast. Of course, I am your host, Rob Wilson, and I am extremely excited to have our guest today. You guys know I love to talk about personal finance. So we've got our guest today, Farnoosh Torabi, who is a personal finance guru. You've seen her on Yahoo, you've seen her on the Today Show, a number of other media outlets, and you may have already picked up her new fantastic book, When She Makes More, which we're going to dig into a little bit. But Farnoosh, thank you so much for spending some time here with us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Rob. Thanks for having me on. Congrats on the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So just in case there might be a few individuals who may not be as familiar with you as others, can you just give us a little bit of overview of your background, where you came from, and kind of what you're doing now?
Sure. Sure. Well, I've been working in the personal finance field for about 12 years. I studied finance at Penn State. Then I went on to Columbia to get a degree in journalism and kind of married the two backgrounds, two educations, and started immediately working in personal finance as a journalist, and have worked at Money Magazine, and later went into television and worked for a news station in New York. So I've been covering personal finance from a journalistic perspective in a variety of mediums: print, TV, internet. Worked at Yahoo for 3 years doing a great show there called Financially Fit. Along the way, have written a few books. The first one was called You're So Money, Live Rich Even When You're Not, dedicated to young adults, helping them manage their money as they get out of college and try to get ahead in life. Second book, Psych Yourself Rich, more about the psychology of money and how that it impacts us in all the decisions that we make. And the third and most recent is called When She Makes More, 10 Rules for Breadwinning Women. As my audience has evolved into more and more women, I'm a woman, clearly, wanted to focus on a trend relevant to being a woman today, which is that, we're making more in our relationships, but it doesn't come without its own set of complexities, financial and emotional. So I wanted to explore that, and that's what the book is all about, and provides hopefully some solutions for women and men.
That is fantastic. So I want to dig in a little bit there because you've got so much experience with writing books and getting your content out there. And I know a lot of clients that I have and even friends. A lot of folks feel like they have a book inside of them, but for one reason or another, it just doesn't get out there. So can you talk a little bit about maybe first how you got interested in this whole personal finance space, and then how you moved into becoming an author?
Well, I think that money for me has always been a topic that I've never run away from. I've not been shy, to say the least, when it comes to talking about money, exploring financial issues. I grew up in a household that was very open and in that regard. Like, I'm Middle Eastern, so we negotiate, we talk money, we talk shop. It's like, it comes naturally, it flows off the tongue. But so I have kind of this, it's in my DNA in some ways. But, and then from a strategic sense, money, given that it's a kind of a taboo topic in our culture, but yet something that we absolutely need to be informed about and talk about, I realized there was this need, and I could fulfill this need, naturally, but also, having my background in finance and later journalism kind of equipped me with the necessary ingredients to then go out there and try to help people with their finances. And if I didn't have the answers, I would go find them and come back. And so it was an opportunity that presented itself in some ways, but I think it really does speak to my personality. And at the end of the day, I really enjoy helping people. And what better way to help people than with their money? There are a lot of ways you can help people, but I think money is something that not everybody has the interest in exploring. I do. So it was a natural fit.
So how did you deal with the fact that, the personal finance space seems to be a little bit crowded, and there's other information and resources out there. So how did you decide, okay, I'm going to write about this, and I think that my information can stand out amongst all of the other material?
That's a really good question. It is a crowded field. I would say, and this is true for anybody out there who is interested in becoming more of a thought leader in this space. Don't try to be someone you're not. For me, even the people out there who have the most expertise on money have their insecurities about money. They have their weaknesses, and they have their own story about their relationship with money. And when I first entered this market, I was in my early 20s. I had just, had a little bit of job experience. Like, why would anyone want to come read my book? There's a lot of experts out there who've been doing this for a lot longer. And I think so for me, the competitive advantage was saying, look, I'm in the trenches with all these other young adults who don't know squat about money. I happen to be in an opportunistic field of journalism where I can explore these issues. It's my job. But that doesn't say that I know everything. And I kind of use this sort of mantra of I'm in it with you, kind of, I'm learning with my generation. I'm in the trenches. I know this generation better than someone who is perhaps in their 50s and is detached from this generation. So I used my age, frankly, to an advantage. And I used my youth to an advantage. And I married that with my professional experience. And I think that's what gave me the credibility and the ability to stand out in some ways in an otherwise crowded market. And also, I brought personality to it. I tried to be a little funny. I tried to bring color to an otherwise really dry and black and white topic. And we know that a lot of the gatekeepers in the financial world and a lot of the experts, stereotypically, they're older, white male, wearing a suit. It's like your grandmother's accountant. And I thought that this industry could really use a fresh take. And I think we've transitioned to that, where now we have so many diverse people giving great, colorful advice. And I think that while the market is saturated, that it doesn't mean there's still a lot of room for independence and still a lot of room for personality. So if you've got that and you want to flaunt it, it's a great place to do it, because money is dry. Money can be boring. And if you can bring to the table not only expertise, but also a character, something unique, something that is, personality driven, I think you can be really successful with it.
That is awesome advice. And I really want to just point out one thing that you said that really resonated with me, is the fact that you took the tack that, look, I'm in it with you. Because a lot of folks I talk to, and I'm probably even guilty of this too, is that you feel like you have to have every single possible answer to any question that anyone can ever ask you about this topic before you feel comfortable enough in putting yourself out there. And I think that's a great way to put it. It's like, look, I've done some work. I know some things, but look, I'm in it with you, and let's go on this journey. So that's fantastic.
Thank you. And I think especially with finance, because it's so, it's not a comfortable topic for everyone to explore. And if at the least you can bring to the table a sensibility and a willingness to go out there and be someone's advocate for them and come back to them with information, that's much appreciated. I don't think you have to have all the answers, but a willingness to go out there and be an advocate for the average Joe, to give them the information they need. It may not be instantaneous, but I think, people just don't want to necessarily do that themselves. We live busy lives, and this isn't necessarily an area that we all, jump to. We'd rather be doing other things. So if you can provide that service, I think it goes a long way.
Absolutely. So when you came up with the idea for the first book, what's that process like? Do you go pitch a publisher? Were you working somewhere at the time that helped you get that off the ground? How'd that happen?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because I've written 3 books, and every time it's very formulaic sometimes in how to ultimately get a book to market. But more and more, it's become about the author as opposed to the content. And so I'll explain, so when this was 2005 or 2006, I had an idea for this book, helping young adults with their money. Who knew me? I mean, I was my second job in New York. I was working at a news station. So I was working in the media, which did work to my advantage. Publisher ultimately did like the fact that I was kind of already present in the media as an employee, but not necessarily in front of the camera, but that, I had connections perhaps in the New York media market. But what really sold that book, I think, were a few things. One, packaged it in such a way where, again, I presented it as Farnoosh in the trenches, a millennial herself, young adult herself, telling it like it is, has the experience of reporting on this topic for several years, and is a voice of kind of this generation that's gone unheard about money and is very underserved. So that was one way that I positioned it that I think made it marketable. The other thing I would say is that your marketing part of your proposal is really, really important. Publisher really wants to know, how are you going to sell this book? You'd like to think that the publisher would go out there and pound the pavement for you and sell your book for you. And they will do that to some extent, but they really do count on authors to provide that instead. And so for me, it was, as a producer at the time in the world of financial news, I had actually encountered a lot of people who were a lot bigger than me, authors, CEOs, newscasters, and I kind of incorporated them in the marketing component of the proposal and said, I can go back to these people, introduce them to the book, maybe they'll endorse it. Endorsements are key. You're not going to guarantee it, but you can suggest it to the publisher, and that really makes it a marketable thing. And I think my winning ticket to getting this book sold was ultimately also, I had developed this proposal, and I just started a new job at thestreet.com, which, for those of you who know about The Street, it's this fantastic online portal for financial news, mostly macro stock-driven news, and founded by Jim Cramer. who is the host of Mad Money on CNBC, wildly successful. And I presented him my proposal because my literary agent was like, hey, if you can get Jim Cramer to endorse this and we can present this to the publisher as a selling point, you could really get this book to market and you could probably get a nice advance. So I was scared to death to do this, but I did it anyway. I just started working there. I hadn't even met the guy. And here I am like, hey, Jim, will you endorse me? You've never met me and my book. But he graciously took the time to read the proposal. And it took, about a month to get his feedback. And he said, absolutely. He said, I love this. He understood that, this was an underserved market. And frankly, because I worked at TheStreet.com, it was going to be a great marketing vehicle for them. Once going out to, market the book, I would carry the TheStreet.com moniker and marquee. And I think he got that. He's very savvy. He understood that this was an advantageous thing for him and the company. And so the book, I mentioned I work with a literary agent. That was very helpful for me, someone who knew nothing about how to sell a book. These days you can self-publish, and if you've got an online following that's strong, that sometimes you'll be more successful than going the traditional publishing route, frankly.
Do you feel like there's still a stigma between whether you've self-published a book or you have a traditional publisher behind it?
I think only I would say if you're trying to get booked on national television, those producers, they want to vet their guests, and I think having the endorsement of a publisher, it's like long established, I think that can help you. That said, if you are a well-known online celebrity or online blogger or online thought leader, and you've got 100,000 plus followers, and I think that speaks for itself, and it would make sense that you would self-publish because, frankly, it's fewer barriers to entry, and you can publish quickly, and people will automatically buy your book. Probably, you don't have to go through all these motions. So I would say only because I've worked in TV and I know producers that they get a gazillion books to review and to potentially put on the air. And they do have to come up with some kind of system to filter through these books. And I think having it be backed by a brand name publisher does carry weight. But also having been an author who has tried to market her book in a variety of ways, yes, it helps to be on the Today Show. Does it move books? Not always. It's not the guarantee slam dunk you think it would be. Actually, the best way to sell books these days is through email marketing and social media. And I have met authors in the green room at the Today Show who have been on the Today Show, have been on 60 Minutes, have been on for one book, have been on the cover of Newsweek, and they're not number one bestsellers yet, and they're not even perhaps on the bestseller list. I think what it comes down to is this. Think about it. If you're online and you're reading an article on some big news site, or you're watching Good Morning America, you're not in a condition to buy. You're in a place where you want to learn. You might be intrigued, but then at that point, even if you are interested in buying the product, you got to go to your laptop or you got to go into the store and buy it. There's a barrier, right? There's a time lapse. There's lots that can happen between you actually learning about the product and buying it. If you're online and you get an email from your financial guru who you've already bought stuff from, whether it's info products or a service, and he or she's telling you, this is an amazing book. If there's one book you read this year, this should be it. And I'm giving away 5 free books or whatever that is. I think that will instantly get you, it'll move the needle definitely a lot more. And that's like, it could be a very small newsletter that's going out to a few hundred or 1,000 people versus the 10 million that watched the Good Morning America that morning. I think that it doesn't matter anymore. It's about quality. It's not about quantity, and it's about targeting the audiences that are conditioned to buy that, and getting the endorsements from the people who, when they say, "Got to get this book," their followers will go out and get that book. And there are people out there like that.
So have you done things between your last book and this one to build that platform or an email list that, help you launch your book this time?
I wish I had started a lot earlier. I have to say, I started doing that more and more last year, with anticipating this book coming out this year, and really ramping it up in January of this year. It's still got a long way to go. I think that's one of the things that I've neglected, and it's one of those things where you can only focus on so many things in your career at the same time, and things were going so well in other areas of my career, TV, print, and even though I was doing online videos, I wasn't really capturing that audience for myself on my site. In other words, getting the emails, getting a newsletter going, because I had a lot to do. And this was, building your own business, as you know, it's a lot of work, 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 no pay in the beginning. And I was getting paid to do all these other things. So my hierarchy of responsibility was basically do the assignments first that are going to get me paid. And, I was busy enough with that. Now that I've sort of, I'm trying to reorient the business a little bit and try to do more that will help build my own intellectual property online that gets people coming to my site as opposed to all the different places I work for. So that, if I want to build a real business around info products without having to go the traditional publisher route, just create it, produce it, sell it, that I have really a captured audience and a captive audience. And hopefully one day I'll be there. I'm not there yet, I don't think, but I think it's growing, and it's going in the right direction.
That's awesome. So are you still working for some of those other outlets, or are you
Sure.
just totally on your own now?
No. Certainly doing that. The Yahoo show, after 3 years, ended in December of just this past year. I'm also expecting a child in the next month.
Congratulations.
So, thanks. So 2014 has really been about book, baby, some freelancing. And I feel like, while I didn't expect, I thought I might still be doing Yahoo work this year with the videos. Everything happens for a reason sometimes in my life. Like you can't explain it at the time, but I couldn't have imagined having more work this year. Doing a book, rollout, being pregnant, is quite enough for me. And, but at the same time, it's allowed me to really focus too on the online business that I want to build as well, which is, I know it takes time and it takes nurturing and it takes a lot of, not getting paid perhaps for the first few years even, but I'm confident that that's like the next frontier for me, and I'm excited about it.
So many things have gone, so well for you between the books and the media and all of those sorts of things. Can you talk about maybe something that hasn't gone so well, or maybe something that you failed at, and perhaps what you learned from that experience?
I get rejected all the time. I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, for every win, there's like 3 things I didn't get. I think that's what you don't see in my business, in my world. I think that's true for all entrepreneurs too, is that, you have to throw a lot of, as they say, you just have to cast a wide net sometimes and hope that, you'll come back with something at the end of the day. And I have gotten laid off. I have had my jobs disappear overnight, and so I think that's made me have a much thicker skin, and it's made me become more adaptable. I remember going back to the recession in 2009 when everybody was losing their jobs. I lost my job. I had a full-time job at thestreet.com, and I thought things were going really well. And then they told me my job was over. And, it was part of a sweeping layoff that they had there. But, it was, no one expects to ever lose their job. I think that's no matter what you see going on outside, no matter how many friends of yours are losing their jobs, you think, oh, my job is safe. And it was a really scary moment for me. But I think it was the kick in the pants that I needed to really get out there and be entrepreneurial. It's something that I had considered doing and was, frankly, too comfortable to do until they were like, okay, now you have to do it. Life tells you sometimes when you have to do things. And those are the best moments sometimes because you don't have a choice except to, be defeated or conquer it. And I decided to conquer it. Certainly I had my weeks of feeling bad for myself, and it's okay to go through that. But eventually I picked myself up from the floor and never looked back, never went back to having a full-time staff job. And part of that was because probably those jobs were disappearing, but also because I got this newfound confidence to actually do what was scariest to me, which is to be independent in this world of news and journalism and information. But it's worked out. I like being a free agent. I like the flexibility. I can do so many different things, and it suits my personality. You know, I like to snack. I like flavors. I like trying new things. I think I get really bored with the same thing over and over again. And even though that can come with, you feel like you're in control, but sometimes you're not, because, you know, sometimes gigs disappear. My Yahoo show, after 3 years, everyone thought it was going to get renewed. It did not. So you have to it keeps you on your toes, which is actually a good thing, because you never get too comfortable. And I think that's a good lesson for life. You know, just don't ever get too comfortable, because first of all, you lose your ability to take ownership of your life that way. And then also you don't grow. You know, you never get hungry. I'm constantly looking for the next opportunity. Part of my personality, but also because it's practical for me. I have to be. You know, I eat what I kill.
I actually think it's practical for everyone. In my opinion, I think as a general philosophy, I think jobs are gone. I feel like everybody is their own business. And so if you think of yourself that way, I think that's going to keep you more on your toes. It's going to keep your eye looking out for other opportunities and not getting complacent like so many people did heading into 2008, who then had to figure out, how do I retool? How do I get better? How do I make myself valuable in this new economy? And because of technology, a lot of jobs are getting eliminated. And so I think it makes it a necessity that you really have to continuously reinvent yourself.
No, you're absolutely right. Daniel Pink wrote a great book about that, where he talks about, you know, where the economy's headed, global economy. And it is about the people who are going to be most successful. And he, you know, actually it seems to be more like women, because we have a lot of these personality traits where you're flexible, you're adaptable, you know, you have empathy, you're very good at communicating, because you're right. At some point, a lot of jobs will be eliminated because of technology, and they already have. And things are going to get very monotonous. And so what's going to make you stand out is your ability to lead. And what makes a good leader is somebody who can have foresight, somebody who is strategic, somebody who doesn't get set in sort of, you know, a certain way, thinks outside the box. And so there are, in some ways, a lot of opportunities for people like that where that's more their personality.
Wow, I think we might be laying the framework for your next book, because, you know, this is amazing insight and information that you're giving us. And since we're speaking of books, you've got this fantastic new book out right now, When She Makes More. Where did the idea for that book come from?
Again, a personal issue that I was a breadwinner in my marriage. And while I would say my husband and I are pretty solid when it comes to talking about money, and, you know, we're happy in our marriage, it is an unusual place to be as a woman. I think in a relationship, it's not something that I anticipated. And for him too, as a guy, I think it was also unexpected. Although we're making it work, but even in our relationship, where I think we have a good solid foundation, there were unique complexities, and they weren't even just between he and I. My mother, you know, for example, was not convinced that this was an ideal partnership. She thought, you know, I was going to end up having a lot of conflict later on once children entered the picture. You know, being a female breadwinner, a lot of stress. Then on top of that, you want to also be at the forefront of parenting and motherhood and wifehood and all that. And she thought, when is my daughter ever going to be able to relax? You know, and then between my husband and I think also, when you're the female breadwinner, at least in our life, I think he had a hard time embracing the fact that my money is our money, if that makes sense. I think that, and when I explored this for the book, psychiatrists would say, well, it's because typically men, you know, they want to be the breadwinner, they want to be the providers, and when they're not, it's jarring. And then I took it beyond our own micro situation, looking out across the country. You have more women becoming female breadwinners in their relationships, but the reality of what happens when she makes more when she enters a relationship, pretty sobering. Higher divorce rate, higher rate for infidelity. She can feel resentful of him. He can feel like emasculated, you know, like what's my purpose? And so that creates for a very unique, complex situation, not just financial, but also emotional. And I thought, okay, this is definitely something that we need to talk about, and it's uncomfortable. So again, I was the crazy person who thought, let's make this a national dialogue. Let's talk about what's uncomfortable. And the reaction to the book has been mostly great. People really appreciate that I've gone there and brought this to the forefront. But some people are not convinced that you should settle for a guy, for example, who's not appreciative of the fact that you make more. And I don't think it's as simple as that. You know, I think that he can appreciate that you make more, but he's confused by how now he's going to provide for you. Men want to provide. That's something that, you know, it's not an antiquated thing. It's still very much a real thing for men today. And it would behoove men and women to have patience with one another and to say, okay, we all have insecurities, especially about money. The impulse should not be to break up over this, but rather let's see if we can work this out. And that's where the book picks up, is to try to offer these couples some tools, tips, real stories from real couples who are thriving when she makes more, to take back into their own relationships. Because at the end of the day, that's what matters. We want relationships to work. I started out in this field as a money person, but along the way, as I was helping people, you realize it's not about the money ever. It's about how we are as humans, hardwired emotions and relationships. And so, you know, you look back on your life, it's never about, you know, I had this really great, rich life. It's I had this amazing partnership. I had, you know, I think emotionally we really do still want partnership and relationship. So money was sort of the impetus for getting into that world for me, and more. And I'm excited because it's brought me now more into the world of talking about relationships and parenting and career. And so money has really been for me a stepping stone to now get to expand my career and to expand where I'm providing, you know, advice.
You're so right, because, and that's really almost how this podcast was developed, because what I started to realize, you know, I started my career as a financial advisor at Smith Barney, and you go through the training and all that kind of stuff and cold calling. But when you work with real people, what you realize that their problem is not asset allocation. That's most people's issue isn't they don't have the right stock in their portfolio. That is not it. And I've been fighting it for a long time, because I felt like this is what you're supposed to talk about when you're not so knowledgeable about finance and you went to business school and all this kind of stuff. But I realized that I spend a lot of my time just trying to help people get out of their own way. And most people's biggest financial issue is making more money and really living up to their potential. And it's not these sort of the minutia. But anyway, we won't go all the way down that rabbit hole. What are some of the things that you think, not to give your whole secret sauce away, but what are a couple of the tips that you think people can do to try to alleviate this tension if they're in a relationship when she makes more?
Sure. Well, I'll give a financial tip and then I'll give a non-financial tip. So financial tip is, you know, I think it's important with any relationship where there's income disparity, particularly when she makes more, is that you want to attach meaning to everyone's money. And sometimes when she's making more, even if it's just a little bit more, he can feel like his money is meaningless, that her money is supporting the household, it's paying the bills. He is, of course, paying for things, but unless it's appropriated consciously towards something significant, he can feel financially left out and not really an equal player in the relationship when it comes to money. You can make a smaller income, but you can still feel and be an equal player. And the way I suggest doing that is to level the financial playing field attaching the person who makes less, attaching that person's income to significant things. For example, college savings, retirement, the next car you're going to buy, the next vacation that your family is going to take. These aren't everyday wins for this person. She or she is not paying utility bills and paying for groceries necessarily, which is an important thing to do. I think the person making more is best equipped to maybe provide for that, because these are recurring expenses. They can be unexpected expenses. But when you have the opportunity to plan for something like the next vacation, you can budget for it. That's really helpful for then that person making less to slowly but surely pay for that, and then be able to reflect on that and say, I'm providing for my family in really significant ways. My money's going towards our vacations. My money's going towards college. I have this woman that I interviewed for the book who made more, obviously, than her husband. And for him, he was so stuck on the need to make as much, if not more than her, that he was not pursuing a lot of opportunities to work. And he wasn't working as a result. And she said to him, it doesn't matter how much you make. You can make a fraction of what I'm making, but if you just put that money towards college savings, they had 2 kids. You can say, I sent our kids to college. That is not a small feat. That's a huge, huge win. And I think to reorient the way you think about money that way, and then to appropriate the money that way, to level the financial playing field, can help some couples alleviate some of that feeling of left-outedness when it comes to money. The other thing I would say that's not a financial tip, but an important tip for all couples who find themselves at a crossroads emotionally when she makes more, whether it's because he feels purposeless or she feels like she's taking on too much, you got to redefine your purposes in the relationship. A lot of couples, you can't assume that every couple knew that this was going to happen. Some couples get married, he makes more, she makes less, or they make the same, and then suddenly there's this disparity and she's making more. And it shouldn't matter in theory. It should be innocuous, but it does matter because, again, we have these gender role expectations of who's supposed to provide that we're very, attached to. I think you need to reorient your purposes in the relationship. Remember, girls, the guy still wants to provide. And in tradition, that's meant provide financially. And if that's no longer needed of him, he still wants to step up. He still wants to be accountable. He still wants to be your hero. Here's an opportunity now for you to, as a couple, figure out what will that new role be. And the most important thing there is that he has to feel like what he's doing in the relationship is the most important thing to you. If it's not bringing home the bacon, it's doing something else. And that's how you want to position it to him. Like, honey, don't just help me with this. Take over this whole aspect of our life, whether it's overseeing the finances, being the stay-at-home dad, perhaps taking over the domain of food in the household, where if you've got kids, that's a huge responsibility because everyone forgets to make lunch, everyone forgets to make dinner. But if he is the person who's responsible for the groceries, the food planning, the cooking, again, it has to make sense for him. You don't just assign him these tasks, but together as a couple to figure out what's going to be how you're going to support my role as the breadwinner, which I can't live without. And I think if you position it that way, he gets it. It's a win for him and it's a win for her. And everybody, it's like leveling the emotional playing field that way.
Does the pressure mostly come internally, or is it because of the way the male might think that other people are looking at him from the outside?
I think there are 2 forces at play, and those are the ones that you just mentioned. One is there's this internal instinct that some men have to be the provider, the most important provider in the household. And traditionally that's meant to be the financial provider. And then I think society, we know, still expects that men be ready and able to support a family once they get married. And we have this expectation more of men than women. This is according to Pew Research. Last year, they came out with this study that looked at, societal expectations based on gender. So there's societal pressure. There's also your inner voice that's telling you, I got to be a man, and this is how I got to be a man, is to provide financially. So it's a lot. It's a lot for guys, I think. And I do think it's important to recognize that and to not discount necessarily what they're going through, because it's heavy stuff. And just imagine being in a guy's shoes, and it's not easy sometimes then when you're in a relationship with a breadwinning woman, because it does make you rethink, well, what is my purpose? What will others think? It can be very disorienting.
Yeah, it really is. Maybe we need some more movies and television shows that show more women who are in high earning positions.
Or just, where money is not what defines a man's contribution to a family. There are so many other ways that men can be the most important person in a woman's life. And we know that more and more women are becoming financially independent. So it's not like you don't marry for that reason anymore. You marry, I dare say, for love and for other things. And I think we need to see more of that. I do think that women still want to be taken care of, and men want to be taken. I mean, you're in a relationship. You want to feel nurtured. You want to feel like safe. And I think, again, this is like, I'm going to get my, head chopped off for saying this probably, but I think women do still want to feel like they're in a relationship where the man can take care of them if need be. I hear this from breadwinning women all the time. It's like, I'm happy to bring home the bacon, but I also want to know that I'm with a man who, if need be, can go out in the world and provide for us if I can't, and I think that should be expected of both people in the relationship, that you're both willing to step up when needed in whatever capacity to not only make the other person feel secure, but to support the family, support the household, and do what has to get done. And so that's sort of like I think the archetype for the ideal modern relationship.
Awesome. So, Farnoosh, what's next for you? I mean, I know you got book and baby on your list for this year, but what's next? Where do you want to see your life, your career, your business go from here?
Well, I'd love to keep growing on the momentum that I've built online with my own website at farnoosh.tv. And I think to continue this dialogue of female breadwinners is important to, I think this has, again, been a bridge for me, this book, to get into in front of audiences where it's not just talking about money, but talking about all the other interesting things that go on in our lives, relationships, family, career, and to be a part of that thought community, and to do more outreach online and offline. So that means, traveling, speeches, really just building on the business that I've already established, but, expanding the audience and trying to reach more people, not just perhaps through their financial questions, but also life questions, general life questions.
So, any last parting guidance for our listeners out there who are aspiring authors or experts in certain fields?
Well, get that book written. Whatever don't, I think there are a million excuses to not write that book, but I think having, whether it's a book, an info product, a service, having your own intellectual property that is yours will be your ticket to financial freedom, but also career freedom. When I got laid off in 2009, what saved me? The fact that I had a book. I had something that was mine that I could take with me. No one can take that away from you. And that can always be a way to brand yourself and to re-enter the marketplace as someone who's competitive and knows what they're doing. So do explore intellectual property. It could be a blog, for starters, having your thoughts online coherently, getting a following that way. And then, thinking about what sort of info products, a podcast, a book, these are all examples of ways to explore your entrepreneurial spirit, but really create security for yourself in this ever-changing economy.
That's great. So what's the easiest and best way for folks, if they're looking for you, they're trying to find some information, they want to connect, how can people get in touch with you?
I would say Twitter is really fast these days for me, at Farnoosh. 140 characters is all yet, but that seems to always do the trick. And then on my blog at farnoosh.tv, not .com, .tv, you can learn all about me there and find my email and other ways to work with me. But Twitter has been sort of my go-to.
That's awesome. And we will absolutely have a link to for people to go out and purchase the book in the show notes, robwilson.tv/Farnoosh. Those are where the show notes will be. And we'll make sure that people are going and getting that great information in your new book, When She Makes More. So, Farnoosh, thank you so much for spending some time here with us today. You're so gracious. I appreciate all of the knowledge that you dropped on us here today, and I wish you all the success with your book. And pre-congratulations on the new baby.
Thanks, Rob. Thank you so much. This has been really fun, and your podcast is great. I'll be checking it out more and more. And maybe next time there'll be two of us. It'll be me and my guy.
Awesome.
He's been learning a lot about When She Makes More this past couple of weeks. He's been taking notes. He's going to be really well informed when he comes out.
That would be great. We'll do it.
All right. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
Bye.
Wow, guys, what amazing information for any of you that have experienced these types of challenges in a relationship where the woman makes more. So very, very special thank you to Farnoosh for coming on the show and sharing that fantastic advice with us. If you'd like to pick up a copy of her new book, When She Makes More, be sure to check out the link that I have for you in the show notes at robwilson.tv/Farnoosh Torabi. And that's her last name is Torabi. So robwilson.tv/Farnoosh Torabi. Now, here's my big takeaway from this episode. Listen, it's 2014. Times have changed and life is different. More women are going to college. More women are getting great jobs. And many of them, quite frankly, make more than their husbands. So what? The marriage vows say for richer or for poorer, not for richer or poorer as long as the husband makes more, otherwise all bets are off. That's not what it says. So especially to my guys out there, look, get over yourselves. Get over your ego. Unless you're in a relationship where, the woman is berating you or putting you down in some way because you don't make more than she does, then it doesn't matter. If you view your relationship as the partnership that you guys said it was supposed to be when you got married, I'm sure you would be much, much happier. And if making more than your wife is really that important to you, then make sure you listen to some of the archived podcast episodes. And I guarantee that between me and my guests, we will show you how to do that. So the action item for this week, and we always end with an action item because movers and shakers know you can't get to the place that you want to be if you're standing still. So what's your action item? And look, this action item is going to work for people who are in a relationship like this where the woman makes more, or if you're just a business owner out there trying to be successful and your ego is getting in the way because you have this Superman or Superwoman complex and you feel like you could do everything yourself. So this is going to work for both of you. I want you to write down 5 things that make you better as a team than you would be by yourself. So if you're in a relationship, why is your life better? Because you two are now a team. And this might be things like, well, you can live in a bigger house because of your combined total income. Perhaps you were able to go back to school or to take some time and write your book because your spouse was bringing home the bacon, was the breadwinner. If you're a business owner, you're thinking about how your life is or could be better because you have a team, then maybe it's things like you get to spend more time developing and building new business because you've offloaded some of the non-mission critical tasks to a virtual assistant or somebody else on your team. And maybe it's, quite frankly, you can make your business better because you don't have to spend time on things that aren't adding value. So get out a piece of paper, write down the top 5 things that make you better by having or could be better by having a team than you could be by yourself. And I guarantee you that if you focus on those things, you'll be ready to live a much happier and a much richer life. So guys, thank you so much for joining me again on this episode of Movers and Shakers. If you enjoy the episode, we would absolutely be grateful for a review and comment in iTunes. You could do that at robwilson.tv/iTunes. If you missed anything and you want to get a listing of all the resources we talked about in this episode, go check out the show notes at robwilson.tv/Farnoosh Torabi. And lastly, if you want to make sure you never miss an episode and you want to get exclusive information that I only provide to people that are on my list, sign up for the newsletter at robwilson.tv/VIP. And it's VIP because all you guys are very important people to me. Okay, so thanks again for being here. You guys get back to work, and I will see you next week.